So, although we're dealing now with preparation for Chanukah, according to the Maral, but I'll explain certain aspects which is connected also with the inner light of Chanukah and with the question of the relationship between the physical and the spiritual world, which is described in many parts of the Bible, and certainly in the traditions recorded in the Midrashim, the Gemara, of the oral teachings, that first I'll express this idea to do with Chanukah and the lights of Chanukah. The famous American poet Swinburne, he says, "Life is the lust for the light of the lamp that is dark until the day we die." Means it's a recognition of many men of intuition that, for example, Goethe, who's regarded by many as the greatest literary genius of Europe, Germany, but also of Europe in general, just before his death, he said, "Mehr Licht." Now I see more light. In fact, he wrote even a whole work on colors and light. He wrote on many different subjects. And when he was about to die, he said, "Now I see more light than ever seen before." So, also in the Midrashim, frequently, want a comparison between Olam Hazeh, this world, and the world to come. They say the night, which is dark, is like this world, and the world to come is light. From means the world to come, we recognize the spiritual dimension. And that's the whole concept of Chanukah. We say Chanukah is really based upon the purpose of the people of Israel is to spread this spiritual light in the world. That we should recognize not only is this light there when we die, it's there when we live. But when we live, perhaps you only see it like Israel is compared to the moon. We see some light in the night. When people die, they see the ultimate reality, which is the spiritual world. So this spiritual world, if it's really recognized, then it can change also the physical world, if one lives with it. Then you say, I don't have to wait to die to experience it. I can experience it also if I'm not near death at all. Through what? Through the Ner Mitzvah v'Torah. The mitzvot and the Torah, this has in it the potential to allow that light to enlighten our lives whilst we're on this earth. So what is this connection with Chanukah? That's the Maral, we already explained it in part. It's that it's true, Greek thinking came near to this, nearest of all the different civilizations of mankind. This is already hinted at in the Chumash, where Noach describes the future. He says, God will open up the harmony and beauty of the world, Yafti Elokim liyefes, for Yefes, for Yavan. Yavan is the same as we have in English, we speak about the Ionia. It's state of Greece. It was called Aonia's transcription of Yavan. So we know also in Greek philosophy, especially Plato, he also believed that on the one hand was a material world, on the other hand there was a world of ultimate truth, which was really an expression of the highest level of the human mind. So he spoke about the world of phenomena and noumena, division. Phenomena, external facts of nature that we see with our senses and with our logical perception, and the noumena are the ultimate truths which exist in the mind, the human mind. And therefore we elevate the human mind to a high level, recognizing that. But it was not, they did not identify the noumena with, let's say, absolute virtue. And he and his concept of nature, but physical nature always exists. He says eternal. Try to make an eternal aspect of physical nature. Not recognize the complete relativity of physical nature. Physical nature exists, and the noumena exist. So he said, let's say, I'll give an example which he uses. Let's say, I look at this table. So with my eyes, I can see some dimensions, not all of them. I can feel the table, but I can't feel every aspect of the table at one time. I know the true table is not what I see and not what I feel. The true table is the picture of it which exists in my mind of having 6 directions or 3 dimensions. But I can't see the 3 dimensions at once, it's just to add them up in my mind. So if he says, even physical objects, there's one aspect of truth which comes through the facts of nature, and another aspect of truth which comes to the really real truth and concepts of nature. And then, of course, these ideas were developed by science. Science took a lot, the development of Western scientific investigation. It took a great deal from the Greek philosophers. Said that also man is the measure of all things with his mind. And in order to investigate it, we always have to recognize the difference between the two. So then it turns out that, if we go right up to date, that the solidity of the table only appears to be so. But in fact, the table is made up of molecules, which in turn made up of atoms, which in turn made up of poles of energy. And therefore, then it's not solid, in constant motion. It only appears to be solid. There's the appearance, and there's ultimate reality. However, the concept of the one spiritual God of everything, who constantly creates the world but is beyond the world, that was not yet understood by most of the Greeks. It's hinted at by some of them. And this is where we can understand that although Greek science and philosophy, great enlightenment, even to the extent when Alexander the Great, the major disciple of Aristotle, was a big genius and also an energetic prince, that he went to change the barbaric world and allow it to be influenced by the enlightenment of Greece, that when he came to Judea, he prostrated himself in front of Shimon HaTzadik, high priest, and he recognized the higher truth of our Torah. He had a debate with the greatest sages of Israel and asked them a lot of questions, philosophical questions, that were really questions that still remained, or discussed in any case, by Aristotle, and also by Socrates and by Plato beforehand. And this is recorded both in some Greek legends and recorded also in the Gemara. In Tractate Tamid, page 32, you find the description. These days you can look it up in ArtScroll. It's a very fascinating aspect. However, in the end, Alexander, when he went back to Greece, he worshipped the gods. In fact, you read about the way in which he died and the sacrifice he brought to the other gods. So, he had a period where he was shown a little bit of a high level, but I suppose he, according to the Greek records, he still had to fit in with the accepted practices of idolatry of the Greek pantheon, the Greek groups of gods, and also pursuit of pleasure. In fact, he died through a banquet that was made because of his victories, and it was a drinking banquet, and as a result, he died from overindulgence in banqueting. So, but this brings us up to date that in modern times, many of the let's call them the more scientific philosophers who want to face the challenge also of the mindset of the scientists. So they came out with concepts that only reality, which is really ultimately also what's accepted in some of the scientific world, is we've got to use our sense perception and our scientific mental investigation of logic and mathematics to understand more and more the harmony of the universe. So there are two trends. There are many great modern scientists and philosophers also who recognize the truth of the spiritual world and the truth of the Creator. Einstein, I suppose partly also influenced by his Jewish background, although he knew next to nothing about the concepts of Jewish tradition, but he said, my concept of God is the harmony which science keeps on demonstrating more and more of everything in nature. And if there's such harmony, there must be a designer. And that was his higher level of understanding God, which is recognized also in the Bible in many different ways, and certainly recognized by all Jewish thinkers. But there are others, more the philosophers, the scientists, who say that, in words of what are called logical positivists, they say the only reality in the world is that which you know through the sense perceptions and through scientific, mathematical, logical analysis, which has brought us to recognize that the world is based on energy. And things are not as they appear to be. They're different. But never they're different, interpretation, but all aspects of religion, and there being a God who lies beyond nature, that is using illusions. There's illusions. And when I was a student, so because I saw also Jewish students attend the lectures of one of the major proponents of this concept of logical positivism, so I studied it in different ways, and also heard the lectures of this Professor Eyre, who wrote a classical of of logical positivism called Logic, Language and Truth. He said, this proves everything else is elusive. So, I used to argue with him in the lectures. I said, you say that everything is based. I said, this concept, one of my arguments was, which he couldn't answer. I said, you say that all belief is an illusion. You believe, as an axiom, that sense perception, together with the logical faculty of the human being, that is absolute truth, and everything else is meaningless, an illusion. Some people came out from his lectures and said, before I believed in God, now I don't believe in God. I said, what in God? It's an illusion. So I asked him the following question, which he couldn't answer. I said to him, can you prove that axiom? Is there any way you can really prove for certain that sense perception and the logical faculty in the human being, which may just be a development according to your theory from some sort of a spot which is found in the amoeba or afterwards in the fish, and that develops the brain, and so the brain develops in a certain fashion and creates a certain way of thinking, ultimately a certain way of reactions in the animal world, and the higher reactions in the human beings who are really animals. How can you prove that is certainly truth? It's also an absolute belief of yours. But how do you know it's true? Maybe what you're saying is all an illusion. Who says what you see with sense perception is absolute truth? How do you know? You don't know. It's an axiom. An axiom is something you accept as the basis of all your build-up of how to understand nature, the human being. Prove it. So axioms are assumptions for which there's no proof. Yours as well. Anyway, so he asked me, because I also came, when I was in college, I always wore a kippah. So he said, I want to speak to you in my office. So I said, okay. I went to see him. So he said, why do you ask me all these questions? I mean, it bothers me. So I said to him, you say human, for example, he denied human freedom. He said, no such human freedom. We're all robots. We're all robots. We're all predetermined, whatever we do, by nature, just like the animal world. So I said to him, why do you get upset? Surely it's predetermined that go with the kippah. It's predetermined to ask you questions. So I got more angry. Anyway, look, I said, okay. Then, with that, I didn't go to... Now, I'll tell you what happened. When I was in South Africa, some years ago, so there was a branch of Shir Sameach, and they asked me to give a talk on free will determinism. So I quoted this. And the chairman of the talk was Chief Rabbi of South Africa, with whom I used to work together in the universities in England. He was the head of Hillel, and I went around the colleges, we were a very close friend. So he said, I quoted this from Professor Eyre. He said in the previous high-level newspaper in England, the Observer it's called, in the Observer, this Professor Eyre wrote an article, and in that article he described his near-death experience, where he had an operation, was clinically dead, and he went up to heaven. He always used to say in the talk, the soul doesn't exist. You think you've got a soul? The soul is an illusion. But he said, he recanted, he said, now I know there's a soul, because I experienced it myself. So he accepted the fact he has a soul. The near-death experience has changed many people. Anyway, I went a bit further I read the classical work of the founder of logical positivism. It's called Wittgenstein. So this Wittgenstein, this is their classic for this school, modern school of philosophy. And he says in 6 chapters, he describes how everything in the world is discussed by the philosophers and thinkers is all primarily a discussion without any basis. They're just in words, but the truth is that it's all just imagination and illusion, and the only truth that exists is sense perception and logical mathematical faculty. And the joining together has produced a modern scientific approach to all questions, even of philosophy. One of his major disciples is Bertrand Russell, another one is Professor Eyre. But what happened like this, in Cambridge also, where he came to Cambridge. So his main work, when he comes to the 6th chapter, end of the 6th chapter, he says, the ladder of positivism, when you've climbed to the top, you have to recognize that it's not reality. Then the 7th chapter is one sentence. I mean, he came from Austria, so he said, of that which one cannot speak, one has to remain silent. That's one sentence for the 7th chapter. And what does he mean? Some of his disciples say, what he meant, he was a mystic. He believed in the mystical dimension, but you can't speak about it in language, because language deals with the combination of sense perception and the mind of man. But there's a high level, which is mystical. In other words, you see here that when you reach the frontiers of call it materialistic description, you realize that it's not the reality. The reality is much higher. And that's really, even I said this Wittgenstein was an assimilated Jew, I think, for some generations, but subconsciously, here we have, very interestingly, the 6 days of Master Bereshis and the Shabbat. So that's what it represents. The Shabbat is there, Shabbat Lashem Elokecha. Hashem is the name of God who is transcendent, who causes all existence and is not caused, who creates time and space and causality and all the natural phenomena, but he himself is beyond all these. That's it. It's come out in his work subconsciously, the Torah's approach, and that's what we celebrate on Chanukah. On Chanukah we celebrate the superiority of the light of Hashem and the light of the Torah. And when the Maharal, we started using the expression of Maharal. So he says, the concept of the Seichel HaNivdal. In other words, there's the Seichel, there's the intelligence of man, which is used to interpret the phenomena of the world. And we use it all the time. But the Seichel HaNivdal, that's this expression, means the intelligence which is separate from time, space, and causality. That's it. That's the intelligence in man which is separated from the senses. It's a separate. It's what's called by an early philosopher transcendence. Not the immanence of God, transcendence. This, let's say, Spinoza was very much influenced by the Greek philosophers. And he said, his famous statement, Deus sive natura. That's how he's expressed it in philosophy. He says, God is nature. Nature is God. It's a modern form of pantheism. Pantheism in Greek times was to worship all nature, they say, contains the power of God. You can't expect anything in nature to be just material, no. It's an expression of the God of nature. Even the Baalim, if you look at it more closely, the Baalim mentioned the Tanakh, Baal worship. What was underneath the Baal for intelligent people? The Baal, they said, Baal, all nature was under the guidance of the Baal. Baal means the power, what's like the husband, the active power in the world. Baal is equivalent to some sort of nature with a capital N. People today, they'll say, nature with a capital N, it's got wisdom, it's got laws. And they say, right, in nature you find laws. In nature you find power, different powers. And these are the Baalim. Therefore they said, all different parts of nature, you shouldn't think they're just by themselves, there's a spiritual power inside nature. But what they didn't understand so well, and which was even the origin of idolatry, that's how it started, was that Hashem is the one who constantly creates nature. And He's above nature. He is Mamalik Olalmin. It's true. Divinity, the power of Hashem, exists in every speck of nature, in every part, because He creates it, not because He's just in it. At the same time, He's above it, because He produces it. Atom b'chayes kulam, we said this morning. You are the power that brings life to everything. The life doesn't come by itself. You shouldn't think it lies in nature by itself. That is pantheism. Pantheism in ancient times, they start worshipping different parts of nature. And in modern times, the philosophy is the philosophy that nature is the godly power in the world. But what about the godly power which creates the world? That's the Seichel HaNivdal. For that you need to raise your mind to understand there is absolute. All this world is relative. Above the relative world lies the active, the absolute world, which is God. So the Rambam, when he introduces Magnum Opus, he says like this: if it could be thought, he says, that the absolute power of God does not exist, then nothing can exist. Nothing at all. It means there's no existence. But if a person accepts the concept of the absolute God, then everything has existence only through the power of God. Without the power of God, there's no existence. And that's also the way Descartes developed it. Also, in a certain way, he said, a person, Descartes, and Cartesian philosophy and science works like this, the philosophical basis. He said, all right, philosophy, they said different in religion and philosophy. Faith is based on certainty, and science is based upon doubt, raising questions. So you raise questions about everything. So therefore, a person comes along and says, how do I know anything exists? So Descartes says, since a person comes up with the idea, who knows if everything exists? There was a school of philosophy, or amongst the Greeks, who said, when we think there's an existence, it's just an illusion. We don't really exist. They're called solipsists. They say it's reflected, for example, by some of the men of literature, like Shakespeare said, perchance to dream. Who says that all we see, man is just acting on a stage, and ultimately it's nothing. It's meaningless. It's just like an act, but doesn't mean anything. Perchance to dream. When a person has a dream and wakes up, the dream is not a reality. It's just an illusion. Maybe we're all dreaming. We're all dreaming, and this is not reality at all. That idea comes to people. And there's some truth in it as well. I'm not going to that now. But still, this, the solipsists say that's philosophy. Dr. Johnson is a big wit and also a very deep thinker in British literature. He says, the solipsists, well, what I tell them is, just go and kick a stone hard with your foot. Yeah, kick it very hard with your foot. Yeah? then you'll soon find out the stone exists. The stone exists. Your foot also exists in terrible pain. Yeah. So anyway, but Descartes used this philosophically. He said like this: since I doubt whether I exist, whether the world exists, whether God exists, so one thing is clear, that I am doubting. If I am doubting, it proves that I exist. So if I exist, then maybe my thought and my perception also exists. And therefore the world around me exists, because that's what my thought, everything, I exist. I see the world around, so the world exists. I start analyzing the world and I see design everywhere, so therefore designer must exist. That's how he built up his philosophy, believing there's a designer of the world. That's certainty, just like I translate my thought. Now, Rav Hirsch was a brilliant, very brilliant thinker, and he took a lot of his deeper thinking from an analysis of the Hebrew language. It was the analysis of Rav Hirsch and some others of Hebrew. Even today they say Hebrew reflects the original language of mankind. Many who analyze languages, they say it's got the basic elements of certain linguistics which you don't find in any other language. So they say it like this, that in Hebrew, what's the word for existing? To exist.
L'chiyot.
L'chiyot is to live, but to exist is liot. Liot. Haya. The verb root haya, he was, ye he will be, hove he is. So you have, for example, I exist is Eya, I am. And he exists is ye, he will be. And he exists now is hove. So there's all the root is hey, yud, hey. So in phonetics, there's an inner connection with yud and the gimel. If you study phonetics, you'll see it's correct, and you'll find also Hebrew roots, the yud and the gimel, because the way to pronounce the letters of the alphabet has been preserved at its highest level amongst the Yemenites. If you heard Yemenites saying brochs and tefillah, you'll see, because they've kept more than any other tradition, kept the original pronunciation of Hebrew. Because they make a distinction between with a dagesh, without a dagesh, where we don't make distinctions, but many of them. So they also make many other distinctions. So it turns out the Gimel Yud are interrelated. So that also in Hebrew, lahagot means to meditate, to think. Hikayon is even the modern word for logic. And haya is to be, to exist. So it says like this. It says not cogito ergo sum. Descartes said cogito because I am doubting whether I exist and starting to think, do I exist? Does the world exist? Does God exist? So therefore I must exist. Cogito, since I think, ergo therefore sum. So therefore I definitely exist. If I definitely exist, that's how I built it up. Rav Hirsch says no. We say different, cogitor ergo sum, which means I am thought. Hashem thinks of me, that's why I exist. I only exist because Hashem thinks. It's through Hashem's thought that I exist. Through Hashem's power of thought that I can think. He creates my power of thought. So that's the basis. And really this basis in the language is described in the first vision of Moshe Rabbeinu, when Hashem revealed himself to him. He asked, what is the name of Hashem? So he said to him, the name of Hashem is, I am that I am. What does it mean, I am that I am? That means I am absolute existence. Everything else only exists because of something else. That means there's a type of causal relationship in whatever exists in this world. Here we have the principle, which today is worked out scientifically, the relativity principle, that everything that we know is relative. In other words, let's take a simple example. We are sitting still in this room, and this room is stationary, and the ground upon which the room stands is the hill here in Hanof, which is stationary, and we don't feel that we're moving at an enormous speed. Just like in a very advanced supersonic aircraft, you think that you look down, you see, the face of the globe is moving so fast, all the houses and the trees. You sit still in the supersonic aircraft. We are here in the supersonic and the supernatural, we can say, globe of the world, which is a spacecraft called Earth. In this spacecraft, we can feel stationary here. We're not moving at all. Still, yeah, I can move within it. So that's the principle of relativity. You can only measure distance, motion, and when it comes to also weight, all measures are all dependent on where is the measurer, from which point of view looks at it. It's all relative. But the one who creates this relative universe is the creator. So this is I would say the basic concept of the Seichel HaNivdal, in other words, the Olam Haba. Olam Haba brings you to a concept, be close to Hashem, who produces thought in my mind, produces me as a body, non-stop. It's not that he wants... See, the Greek concept, Aristotle believed in God, but he believed in the eternity of God, the eternity of nature. He said nature. And later even comes up with the fact that God first created a certain heilig essence of energy, from which then the other parts of the world develop. And that heilig aspect is as eternal as God himself. But we say no. The Rama goes into this in detail. He says no, we believe in creation, in constant creation. So this brings us to a deep understanding of Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. And the essence of Chanukah is the higher level of concept, which translated also into a lifestyle, is represented by the teaching of Hashem, which is based on the Seichel HaNivdal. It's based on the concept that we have in possession absolute set of values, an absolute revelation from the absolute God. Although we ourselves and our bodies, we are governed by time and space and causality. We've gone so much beyond time. I'm sorry.
Stop.
We really do.